Abiding in Jesus behind the doors of our home can be challenging, and building a solid foundation from the inside out is crucial. This podcast encourages us to be rooted in the truth with authentic conversations and purposeful encouragement. Join your host, Miranda, as we learn together what it looks like to abide in Jesus during the in-between, everyday moments. Come as you are, and let's abide together. Here is your host, Miranda Tate.
Hey friends, I'm your host Miranda Tate, and welcome back to the final episode of Season 1. On Episode 5, I shared some of my recent testimony, and today we will be walking through the rest of that and how I learned to put all of my trust in God. Again, it is my prayer this meets somewhere where they are at, that it is relatable and they see God and His goodness shining through it, which leads each of us to find Him more on our daily walk. A little recap: in Episode 5, we left off with discussing walking in obedience with my example of accepting the youth minister coordinator job. So let's get into it. The following year flew by fast. Even though I wasn't teaching or coaching, my plate was full. I had the youth minister coordinator position to take care of. I was trying my best to keep building our Christian brand and do all the pop-up shows I had committed to. I was keeping a little girl 5 days a week, plus being a full-time stay-at-home mommy with everything else. I wanted to be everything for everyone, plus chase my dreams too. I would soon start to realize I needed to learn to say no. Too bad I didn't learn that in that moment of feeling that way. However, we continued through and hosted a pop-up vendor event and started talking to a fellow business owner about his building. The conversation soon led to us having the opportunity to rent it. It was one of those crazy dreams you dream of when you're a kid, one you thought that would never happen. I knew I couldn't keep my friend's little girl and run my own brick and mortar store. We made the necessary adjustments and started praying and waiting to see if this would actually work. Goodness, I forgot how many ups and downs and emotions went into opening the brick and mortar. The timing we had talked about with opening the storefront didn't happen exactly how we had planned, but we kept pursuing the opportunity. Everything fell into place in the end, so honestly, I felt as though it must have been meant to be, right? Tons of hours went into trying to make our grand opening correlate with a fellow business owner's anniversary, so we could celebrate one another and help support each other. The hours were long, and it was the beginning of feeling as though I was spiraling. I had previously been struggling with balancing it all, and now I felt like I had just traded out one busy thing for an even bigger, busier thing. I kept telling myself it must be from God and be the next move we were supposed to make, but looking back, I'm not convinced. I compromised what I wanted my business to stand for and sell, adding items to try and be successful and give that small town boutique vibe. I compromised my time for intentionality with everyone: family, friends, the church. In the beginning, I thought I could do it all. I had this overwhelming need to prove myself to others and even to myself. Early doubts kept me praying for sure and asking God if I was capable. This had been the most significant risk up to this moment which I had taken. And for some, it may come more natural, but for me, it was big time scary. A day in the life as a boutique owner looked like this. Wake up early and get ready before the twins woke, complete a few household chores, cook breakfast, feed the kids, pack up lunches, and the other things we were taking to the store. Get them ready, tidy up, and head downtown. Hurry to open while getting lunches set up for the kids. I attempted to have them nap while we were up there, work while we were there. Looked like it looked for many others, but adding the twins into the mix of them needing your attention was exhausting. Then I would come home to the never-ending to-do list and stay up late to do it all over again. I wish I had the words to truly describe how much I felt like a failure during those months of being at the store. Everything was falling on my shoulders. I wanted to be a good mom. I wanted to be successful with this boutique. I wanted to prove to myself that I could do it, prove to my husband that I could do it. I still needed to be a good housewife and take care of the things at home. I wanted to make sure I was leading the youth well. All of this just came spiraling and to a point where I felt like I was only surviving. I'm not quite sure you would even call it surviving at that point. The funniest part of this is, from the outside perspective, people said, "Miranda, you're killing it. I'm so proud of you. I don't know how you do it all." I would tell them I wasn't doing it all, that I sacrificed something each day for something else. But looking back, maybe that's on me. Maybe I didn't give enough cringy details, or I wasn't vulnerable enough in the moments for people to see how much I was struggling. I'm sure that's because I don't want anyone to think that I can't handle something and I'm too prideful to admit at times that I need help, or maybe that I just can't do this. Maybe this isn't meant to be. In reality, we aren't all meant to be great at everything we try. And despite what others may tell you, it's okay to fail. We opened the storefront in July, and probably by the end of August or 1st of September, I was starting to let doubt win. I was feeling as though I couldn't handle this, and I had gotten myself in too deep. My husband and my relationship is very much an accountability partner one. We push each other to be better. We always want to be our best versions for each other. So therefore, our standard is high, not only for ourselves, but for each other too. When I'm talking to him about feeling like I can't do it with the store, it would be conversations of, well, maybe you need to stay up later, or maybe you need to get up earlier. What if you did this to help you? When he responded this way, I would try all those things that he would suggest, and at the end, it just made me feel even more like a failure, because I was trying to do things he thought would work, and they weren't working. I never wanted to fail him. In the midst of all of this, there's a crucial part that I was missing: Jesus. I would read my Bible and I would go to church, but only out of obligation. There would be highs where I would dive in quite a bit and I would feel at peace with things and feel connected to God. And then there were other times that I would not. However, you can see here and in these moments just how much more I cared about what my husband thought and trying to please Josh instead of trying to please Jesus. There came a time not long after that in which I looked at Josh and said, "What if I just can't do it?" Of course, the conversation turned to, you could do anything. He always believes in me. It's one of the things I love most about him. He sees things that I can't see in myself. I decided to grind it out and try to figure out how to balance it all. That's when I really started to focus on, how do I say no and when do I say it? Learning when I had already reached my capacity, and also in what I was putting my yeses into. Was I putting my yeses into kingdom things and things God wanted me to put them into, or was I just overextending myself that I could not serve Him well? J&M Designs is a Christian brand with Jesus-filled dreams. They are cultivating and creating anything and everything that helps us see Jesus throughout the day, helps us feel confident in who we were created to be, and brings us joy amid the chaos. Shop now at jnmdesigns.com or book an appointment to shop their mobile boutique. This next part is where I believe my world changed completely. This changed my perspective on a lot of things, but like I said earlier in this story in episode 5, I don't want to be insensitive to anyone else's feelings on pregnancy. I'm probably going to be pretty vague here, as I want to be able to fully express everything that took place and everything I learned from carrying Little Miss, but this episode is not the time for such a conversation. There was a day at the store that I felt really wretched. Come to find out, I was pregnant. 36 years old, 3rd pregnancy, 5th child. I was on birth control, and no, I hadn't been taking antibiotics. This wasn't planned and wasn't supposed to happen. I had an immense amount of mixed emotions. I knew pretty immediately I couldn't run a storefront and have another baby up there. What in the world would my mom say? And what would Josh's reaction be? We had talked about having one more kid, but not now. Well, actually, Josh had always said no. Without divulging all, I had a difficult time finding out I was pregnant, and I didn't tell anyone for multiple reasons. Emotionally, I was struggling and scared to take steps in sharing our news with others. However, telling my mom I was pregnant was a breath of fresh air. After her reaction with being pregnant with the twins, I wasn't sure what she would say, so I told her pretty quickly after finding out. Without hesitation, she said, "That's great. A baby is a blessing." As I shared with you previously, she didn't seem to want us to get pregnant when we had the twins, and her reaction crippled me. But without a doubt, I know how much God has changed mine and Josh's relationship, and I believe she must have been able to see those things too. In our story as parents, we felt like we did a lot of things wrong with the boys. With having the twins, we tried to intentionally parent. God's grace, new mercies daily, and transformation in our lives changed us for the better. And even though we still have a long road to go, I can see the growth in our entire family when we make God first. I didn't know what life looked like with Little Miss, which was crippling to me because I may or may not struggle with being in control and always wanting a plan. I knew one thing to be true. I could not run that storefront with 3 kids up there every day. In talking with Josh, we both realized that maybe this was the only way we were going to figure out that we needed to slow down. As my mom said, a baby is a blessing. She wasn't wrong, but it was making me rethink everything. Had I been wrong with all the decisions I had been making this entire time? Had I been missing the boat? I was learning I hadn't surrendered everything to God. I really hadn't learned to be obedient either. My entire life, my granny had said to me, "I wish you could just slow down." And my response was, "Me too, Granny, me too." I'm learning it just isn't in my nature. For years, I've prayed out this song, "Make Room." I won't sing it for you, but parts of it goes like this. Here is where I lay it down, every burden, every crown. This is my surrender. Every lie and every doubt, this is my surrender. I will make room for you to do whatever you want to. Shake up the ground of all my tradition. Break down the walls of all my religion. Your way is better. I desperately wanted all those things to be, but was my heart prepared for what I was asking? And was my heart and mind willing to follow God's plan and not mine? I closed the store, learned some more about letting go of having to be in control, and after a long day, had a baby girl on a Friday in June. I've prayed a ton about God's plan for our Christian brand and started working on fighting against comparison. Fall came and went, and the comparison trap was still winning. The details don't matter here, but I decided to step back in certain areas to focus on my relationship with God and what He wants instead of what I want. December approached, and I felt the Lord pushing me hard towards this podcast. The word home and obedience kept coming to mind everywhere I looked as I reflected on what I needed to focus on in 2023. Neither scared me because I thought I had been doing a good job at both of those. Wrong. Doing the podcast has been one of the most challenging things I have ever done. To me, it's intimate and scary to share myself in this capacity with you. Sit me in front of my community in a safe environment, and I'm good. But here is unknown. As I walked through the weeks leading up to the podcast, I had a huge weight on me, realizing that maybe I should get baptized. I started talking to my preacher about this in January, feeling all the things. Aren't you a youth minister coordinator? What would people think? You were baptized when you were 8, right? Does that not count? I went back and forth, prayed and spoke to Josh about it. I didn't know the correct answer, but I desperately wanted to know that there was one. We prayed about it, and Josh decided he was going to get baptized too. We kept going back and forth on when. It was now March, and I couldn't tell you exactly what the message was about that morning. But afterwards, I walked down and told my preacher I wanted and needed to be baptized. I wanted to live unapologetically for Christ. He looked at me with a grin and said, "Great, next Sunday work for you?" Yes, yes it does. Now, I felt sort of bad that I hadn't included my husband in this decision. With his job, he isn't always available. But I knew I needed to act in obedience, and for once in my life, I needed to care more about what God thought of me than anyone else. I truly want to love Jesus more than I love my husband. And I know that that sounds scary to some, and some may not believe that to be true, but 1,000,000,000 times I can't even explain to you. When you start making Jesus your focus, everything else in any relationship you have becomes easier because it's an overflow of His love, not just your love. That next weekend, Josh joined me and we were baptized in front of our church home. All those worries of what others thought weren't even valid. I was only thinking about glorifying God and His goodness in those moments. I was super excited to be walking in obedience. And my memory isn't great, so I decided I'm going to record this so I don't forget about it. And as I watched it back, I thought, oh, maybe I shouldn't have recorded this. Complete excitement and overwhelming joy is what you can see on my face. To be an obedient child and walking in submission to the Lord. Then I looked at my husband standing across from me, and within seconds, all the emotions flooded me. Remembering where we once were to looking at where God had brought us. Look at His redemption, His goodness, His love, His patience, His kindness, His mercy, His grace. He had redeemed us. He had restored us. We were His. I will forever be grateful for that moment together. And yes, I know that baptism does not save you. That is not what saves you if you think it does. We can have that conversation through DMs if you want to, but it wasn't the moment of salvation for both of us, but it was a moment of obedience and walking in what God wanted us to do. And doing that together and seeing how far God had brought us, because it was not God. If we would have stayed where we were in the beginning of our relationship, oh goodness gracious, that would be bad. And I just couldn't contain myself, which I'm an emotional person anyway, so, there's that. I once couldn't remember when I was saved or when I was baptized, but without a shadow of doubt, I know I surrendered it all to Him at 27 years old, and I walked in obedience of believer's baptism 10 years later. It took me a while to follow in believer's baptism, but that is what sanctification is, a process. One thing I hope each of you walk away with today is everyone's story is different, and that is okay. It would be extremely boring if we were all the same, right? So just know that your story matters, no matter if you were saved young or saved later, or saved young and then didn't feel like you were saved and got, asked God then later on. Whatever it is, it can make a difference in someone else's life. Takeaways for me over the past few years. Acting in obedience is a process. It's in our nature to hesitate or to say no. I've learned when you start taking small steps, they turn into bigger ones. And then God just asks you to do more. So all of those small steps in obedience is just preparing you for something bigger that He has planned for you later on. My friend sent me this quote from a Bible study she's doing, and I can't think of a better time to share it. No matter where you look or how you describe God, He breaks all the molds. He is bigger and greater than we can grasp. That couldn't be more true. He has something better planned for all of us. We just have to remember to not box Him in. And with that, the second thing I have learned, which is still a struggle at times, is my relationship with Jesus cannot be conditional. and it cannot be when I feel like it. I've taken steps to make it more about a discipline and relying on what I know to be true about Him, His character, and His word. This has allowed me for less moments of doubt and more moments of blind, unapologetically, courageously following Him. Lord, I thank you for this day, Lord. I thank you for this listener. I thank you for this podcast. I pray that you would just help us walk in boldness and truth of who you say we are, Lord. I pray for the one that's listening that whatever it is they're hesitating on or struggling with, Lord, if you're trying to convict them of something that they need to turn from to draw them closer to you, Lord, I pray that they would blindly trust you. I pray that you would give us the confidence to share our testimony with others, Lord. I pray that you would help us pursue you so ferociously that we could do nothing but show your goodness to everyone around us, because it is just pouring out of our souls, Lord. That you would overwhelm us so much with your love, your kindness, your mercy, your goodness, your patience, Lord, that we could do nothing with it, but it overflow into every aspect of our lives, Lord. Not just small parts that we choose to fit into it, Lord, but that we would surrender every part of us to you, and that it would only be to glorify you and honor you, Lord. I thank you, I love you, and I pray these things in your name. Amen. I can't believe we've done it, guys. It took me a few extra weeks, but that is the last episode of Season 1. Season 2 will be back at you this fall, hopefully with some interviews with other people. So be praying about that all of that comes to be in His timing and not mine. I love you. I thank you for listening and being a part of this journey with me as I walk in obedience with Him. Remember, God is good. Even in the moments of doubting, He knows best. Till next time, guys. You can find where to follow us in our show notes, whatever platform that you currently love, we are probably on. And don't forget to follow the podcast itself. And if you don't, that's okay too. You're still loved, but please remember that does help us spread the gospel and encourage others in their walk in abiding with Jesus. The music you heard today was produced and created by Upper Room Studios.